Once again, welcome to ABL Television. I'm here with Alex SEGBEFIA, and we are so grateful to have him here, one of our very own. Lots of memories, and it's been a while. Of course, climbing through the trenches, and of course, bringing you the very best in terms of current affairs programs, Kasa Prekun, during the good days, of course, talking about the politics in the diaspora with Alex and his team, and of course the NPPs, the NDCs, the CPPs. Oh, what a memory, and it's good to have Alex here. Alex, welcome to ABL Television, and of course later on you'll be trekking across to Voice of London Radio, which are all African radio that has metamorphosized to such heights. Great to see you here, welcome.
Thank you very much, OSAG4, and thank you to your viewers and listeners across board. It's always a pleasure to come to one of the pioneers of radio and TV in the diaspora, OSAG4. We are very proud of what you've been able to achieve.
I'm humble, and I'd like to thank my crew members as well for making sure we have this privilege to have a word or two with you. First of all, what brought you to London this time around?
Well, we inaugurated a new branch of the NDC. First there was just the London branch, then we have North and South. And subsequently, this last week, we inaugurated the East London branch. And we had the first face-to-face meeting of the chapter in London yesterday. So that is what brought me to London.
Great stuff. Okay, so talking about it, is it the chapters or the charters or whatever you call it?
Branches and chapters.
Branches and stuff. How many have you got so far?
Oh, we have quite a few.
Right.
In terms of the chapters are the main body in each separate country. So we are looking at over 30-something odd countries that we deal with, where there are branches under the leadership of a chapter.
Right.
So London is just one of them.
Great.
We have across board.
Yeah. Sunday, talking about the great Ghana independence celebrations. Before we go into other areas, which I know we've had lots of interactions before, but let's look at the Ghana independence. So far, what's your recollection, and have we made inroads, or we could have done better with Dr. OSAG4 Kwame Nkrumah? What's give us a bit of the whole independence day and what you make out of it.
Well, happy birthday to all of us. Today Ghana is 65 years old, and I think that there are lots of things we can be proud of and say that we have actually as a country moved forward. However, it is also clear that there are many areas of improvement and many things we could have done differently. I think the coup of 1966 set certain things in motion, which sent us back for quite a while with coup d'etats and different types of governments. We finally settled in 1992 on a democratic dispensation, which is a hybrid of both the American and the British systems, and that has seen us through to present day. Yes, I think that, as I indicated, there's a lot to be proud of, but there's a lot of work that still could have been done, and we could have done a lot of things differently. I believe that the patriotic fervor of OSAG4 and Kwame Nkrumah has been lost, and we have to find a way to become proud Ghanaians once again.
Great stuff, and of course Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the main man himself, of course, leading Ghana to the independence. Now, because of time factor, I'm going to just move forward a bit. My position on the independence, a bit of a reflection here. If you look at the achievements of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and then you also look at the Pabinya nuclear facility, the Akosombo, the Mahabo, Ghana could have had submarines, and defense-wise will be strong in terms of electricity and development across not just Ghana but Africa. Would have been almost a first-class, nation and a continent. And the rivalry, or should I say, the jealousy of our Western partners. When you look at from that angle, do you feel a bit, regrets that
There are lots of regrets. The coup of 1966 should never have taken place. Kwame Nkrumah should have been left to continue the work he had begun. People should rather have come on board instead of trying to fight him. And it's always good to keep governments on their toes. So there's a need for a vibrant opposition.
Sure.
But not to the extent of bombings and the like that occurred, eventually teaming up with the CIA to actually have a coup d'etat in Africa, which set in motion a lot of things in Africa, which created a lot of problems for us as a people, and also set in train a motion that we didn't come out of till 1992. What people don't forget is that between 1981 and 1992, there were over 20-something attempted coups in Ghana. And none of them was a successful coup, but they existed. And we have now run through from 92 to present day, where we've had a democratic dispensation, but we lost a lot of time along the way, and our development has been stifled. And as I said, envy, hate, and jealousy have been the hallmark of some of our political dispensation. And therefore, it has not allowed us to grow as a people. We've somehow lost our patriotism. I was saying on another program that, look, when we were growing up, we had to recite the national anthem and the pledge in school, and we pulled the flag up. You don't see that anymore. People don't identify as being proud Ghanaians, and so on and so forth. So I think in that direction we have lost a lot, and if nothing, Kwame Nkrumah gave us that. And I think if he had stayed as long as Lee Kuan Yew did for Singapore, and then also the Malaysian story, we should have had the same story, but unfortunately, here we are.
Great stuff, of course. It's so sad. For me, I go deeper, I look at those issues, and when you look at the development of the colonial masters, when Kwame Nkrumah even did the motorway, Britain hasn't even got the M1, the motorway. So it's so sad, and sometimes I don't know whether the education, the information, the enlightenment really goes to the core of our people, the young ones, to pick up and understand what we've lost in terms of the Kwame Nkrumah thing. It's sad, but I'm sure there's Kwame Nkrumah in you and Kwame Nkrumah in others that might carry on and maybe bring that thing back. Anyway, let's go straight and look at other pressing issues. We mentioned about the Fourth Republic, which the 1992 Constitution and the Fourth Republic, which you yourself are involved in now. Talking about the hybrid in terms of a presidential system, do you think that we could have opted for the prime ministerial system, whereby we will be more like the British system a bit, where the head of government or the leader would then sit in parliament to be questioned directly by legislators as well, instead of having the presidential system, a bit of the American system where sometimes they live too luxurious and forget they are part of the people.
I believe in checks and balances. No matter what system you use, there should be checks and balances to ensure that there's transparency, rule of law is working, and you don't create dictators or people who have their way completely. And we are actually seeing it today in our parliament. For the first time, the numbers are so close that you must have consensus building. If not, nothing can work. The executive relies on the legislature to pass laws and to get projects and budgets passed. If you do not have a situation where you can meet with the legislature in a way which is amiable to all parties, then you get into the problems they're having with the e-levy. So the system has its checks and balances, and also should inculcate the idea of compromise and dialogue. Because we've never had it before, every government that comes, regardless of which political party, has had a majority. So when the executive wants something, the minority can have its say, but the majority always has its way. That is not what is happening now. So we all have to re-educate ourselves, and we must understand that we must have consensus building, and there has to be some dialogue. But the presidential system of itself stems from the uncertainty at the time as to how we were going to deal with a system whereby you had a military government handing over to a civilian government, and this need or fear that there were going to be reprisals, and therefore a lot of power was put into the presidency, and therefore it took it forward. But as from one president to another, things have moved on. And that is why Professor Mills at one point put together a team that went around the whole country for constitutional review.
Sure.
And therefore it behoves us to look at those provisions and begin to implement them, because a constitution is a living document,
Sure.
and you can outgrow it. And at the moment, it is clear that there are some aspects of it that could do with some change. So I don't think of itself, we needed a British system, or we needed, but one of the points to make, what stops the president from being required to come and give questions and answers in Parliament, written into a constitution every month?
Right.
Nothing stops it.
So why is that not being done?
Because it's not a law, and therefore there's an option. But if there's no option, he'll have to come, or he flies.
So why can't this system, or let's say the practice, I'm talking about conventions, okay, which is normally the flesh that covers or helps the bone, which is the constitution itself, move on. So if the president could be coming to Parliament every month, that would have also been a bit helpful.
I don't have a problem with the suggestion, but it must be written into law, because if you give an option, the president will not come.
Exactly. So
I mean, there's too much at stake for him to come and answer certain questions.
Okay, let's quickly. I'm bringing these things because I'm trying to see that most of our problems, especially back home in Africa, is too much power goes into a person's hands, and if the person becomes power drunk and doesn't really have the country at heart, it can be very detrimental to the rest of the people. And that is why I'm trying to let us have a look at the fundamentals and the foundations. Whilst
the greatest problem is not the presidency. Yes, the power of the presidency has to be watered down to a certain extent, but the actual problem we have in Ghana is a lack of independence of our institutions. And increasingly, the perception, not that it is real, but the perception is that the institutions in our systems, the infrastructure, tends to sway too much towards government's requirements without having an independent stance. And anytime you have somebody like Demolevu who wants to stand up to government in his right, then they find ways of getting rid of you. And that does not strengthen the institution of the Auditor General's Department, the Electoral Commission.
That's a very solid point you are making. Yeah. But then, how do we try to address that? Because if the institutions are not independent enough, and then we don't have good enough separation of powers, because
it all stems, I've said, and I'm a very ardent believer, that people say that the president is all powerful, but the truth of the matter is, the president doesn't interpret the Constitution. The most powerful body in the country is the judiciary, in my humble opinion. And what you need is a very strong, independent judiciary, who, whatever happens when it comes to them, they look at it and say, no, according to this, we believe this is what should happen. But if there's judiciary, and it doesn't stem with just one political party or the other, more so we think now than before, but it has happened in the past, sways towards the people who are appointing them or not into the higher echelons, namely the Supreme Court, then you have a problem. Because the bottom line is, you should be able to take a matter before the court, and if the court is being totally objective with what it says, then you don't have a problem, because you're standing on good ground. If your case is not good and they throw it out, fine. But there's too many instances of where it's almost as if the courts are bending over backwards to assist
this is where we realize that probably executive influence then steps in to...
Exactly.
Yes.
And Professor Raymond Atugua put out a paper
Yeah.
not too long ago where the Chief Justice was present and was quite upset with him when he gave empirical evidence over the years of how Supreme Courts had made decisions based on who had appointed them. So we are not talking of something that is not has not been proven or has not been seen, but that is how it is. So unfortunately, it doesn't help us, because are we making decisions based on law, or are we making decisions based on who appointed us? Now we all believe that it's being made on law, but the perception is very different.
These are issues that can address the very weak systems that we have, and I'm very privileged to have Alex SEGBEFIA here, who is also, should I say, an expert in law. If you don't know, yes, top barrister himself, and one time part of the public prosecution here in London and in the UK. And then now in Ghana, of course, becoming one of the deputy chief of staff, former deputy chief of staff, and then you went to defense and then to health.
That's correct.
Okay, we'll be dribbling our way there. But before that, I'm looking at the fundamentals here where we can get it right, strengthen the institutions, because when Obama came to Ghana, he was talking about the same thing.
Exactly.
You know? So we can talk about so many things, and the government has done this, is corruption here, there. And if we are not really looking at the fundamentals, how do you address those?
The word fundamentals is for only Baumia. You're not allowed to.
Well, now, with those fundamentals, we're going to be looking briefly at that, but still looking at the separation of powers, how to really entrench the independency of those institutions. And you mentioning the judiciary, which I tend to agree with you, but and then comes the rule of law, the policing, who have to work with the judiciary,
The civil service,
all those things. So
all of them are institutions.
So it can be done, Alex. So what is stopping?
We do not have a sanctions regime. No sanctions. Anybody does anything wrong, there's a way it drags. We do not have a system. This is why I say the judiciary has a lot to play.
But the judiciary is even
the matter is brought to court. Some don't reach court. I agree. And if it doesn't get to the court, the judiciary cannot do anything about it.
Now, look at the appointment of the Chief Justice, who's head of the judiciary. Right. Now, if that is being appointed by the executive, in a way, don't we have a bit of executive influence and all those
Yes.
things? So we need to be looking at
But we've had instances where judges are appointed by A or B, and they've turned against the position that has been made. NDC brought in the radio stations, including Joy FM. Is Joy FM always speaking for us? No, because we want an independent broadcast, an independent media front where people can say, also, when we are in power and I come onto your radio station, you ask me hard questions. When we are out of power, you ask me for solutions. And if you have to hit, you hit. So that is how journalism should be. But we have the journalists now who have clearly taken up positions which compromise their position of independence as a journalist.
I was even coming to that, because if we are talking about separation of powers, empowering the institutions become independent enough, which will be the foundation of then strengthening the systems. You know, we have the fourth estate, the media, who are supposed to be the watchdog for the people, and it's all been compromised.
But you see, they can also be cowered into submission. Apart from some of them not actually, or positions or benefits they get, there are also those who would want to. But you know, when you have journalists who are being assaulted, journalists who are unfortunately passing on, have been murdered, etc., then it sounds a warning, especially when senior members have gone on air and threatened them indirectly, and then soon after that the person passes on.
So the culture of silence is real.
It's for me, it's very real.
Right. Okay. So
it's very real.
So looking at solutions, and that is why we are having these great discussions.
We must get into a situation where we begin to let everybody understand that if you do something wrong and you are found out, it should be dealt with.
Oh, great. So we are talking about solutions to our many problems right here on ABL television with Alex SEGBEFIA, Honorable Alex SEGBEFIA. We are so grateful. Now,
I must add one thing though.
Yeah, go on.
You know, there's no statute of limitations on offenses.
Okay.
Criminal offenses, there's no time limit,
Yeah.
except for the motor traffic offenses.
Sure.
So, it behoves us, when we come into office, which we will do in 2025, to actually deal with sanctions. And it will also serve as a deterrent for those of us in power to know that power is not your family property. One day it will go. So when if you are dealing with people, know that they too can also come and deal with you.
And the system will shape up.
It will shape up.
Yeah.
But we must take that stance. Because there's so much.
That should come from leadership.
So we are coming.
Okay. And on ABL television, I'm going to hold Alex SEGBEFIA to his tank, right here the place to be, that there's going to be change. And of course, a new wind is blowing, and we'll definitely be optimistic. Okay. Now, looking at, trying to rebuild the whole thing, because a lot of people have given up hope. A lot of people, and the work we do here, we interact with
I don't want to forget this comment that I'm going to make, so let me cut you.
Okay.
The reason people have given up hope is that there's this fallacy, myth going around, which the MPP has been trying to sell, which is not true. That the MPP and the NDC are all the same. It's not true. All political parties are the same. It's not true. We have similarities, but in terms of behavior pattern and leadership style, we have had very different types of leadership. And there is no reason to be comparing us. We don't say we haven't had people who have been corrupt or things like that.
Sure.
But we've taken steps against people of that nature. What steps has this president taken against any of his own people? What? Nothing. Even to remove a minister is a difficulty when it is staring you in the face. So for us, that is why people can say they are giving up hope. They are giving up hope because they've bought into that narrative that we are the same. We are not. If you know that we are not the same, you will have a little bit of hope. They have lost hope for this government. That is true. But they shouldn't bring us into the same basket with the MPP government. No. The NDC never behaved in this way and have never behaved in this way. And the way Professor Mills, the kind of standards he set, it was very difficult for Mahama to veer too much away from that. So we always say Mills-Mahama government. Who? What? If you have Asomdwe as a leader, what more do you want? A man of peace. But one of the things he did, looking at our political history, was not to show a vindictive face or a face of dealing with people simply because even if it was right, it would be seen as vindictiveness.
Right.
So he kind of took his leg off that particular pedal. This time, there's no reason for that. Because the lack of sanction is making people very bold to do anything, knowing that they will get away with it. It cannot be allowed to continue.
All right, so discussing all these things that will go help the country, one of the issues that I want to touch on is actually the campaign. Do you think there's a lot of money spent during campaign time, and that when one is given a mandate, which is a social contract between the electorates and then the government or a party that wins power, then it becomes it becomes winners take all, and then they forget that they have a social contract with the electorates, and then they just all of a sudden, when it's election time, they go begging, crawling, begging the electorates, vote for us, vote for us. The moment they get to power, they change. Whilst you're touching on this subject, just look at the issue of also within a short period of time, most political parties in Ghana, within 4 years term, individuals who have nothing become overnight rich people. These are issues I want us to address this first part of our dialogue.
One of the things we have identified as a political party, which has to be addressed, and it's a national issue now, but is the monetization, if I am allowed to use that word, the influence of money in our political system in terms of vote buying.
Sure.
And therefore, if you always go to somebody and say, oh, please, can I make sure that I'll come and do this, I'll come and do that. And the person doesn't listen to what you are saying and only says, so what have you brought for me? And so you have to now find him an envelope or with some money, or you have to get him a TV set, or you have to get him a phone. The moment you get what position you want, you don't owe that person anything. Because at the end of the day, you have bought your position from the person. The person has actually no basis to come and ask you why. Because when he gave you those things, how are you expecting him to cover the cost? So the way to deal with it is to create a situation where too many people are voting to be bought at all levels. And when that happens, then you get more of a decision being made on people having to go and sell their ideas and not buy the vote from the people. So it's something that we are looking very closely at as a political party. And that's why we are going through the new registration exercise. We realize a long-term thing. It's not, or a medium-term thing. It's not for
I'm
this
glad you
election.
touched on it. But can there be also, I'm saying this because there is a possibility that come 2024,
Yes.
your party will win power.
Yes.
And you being a deputy chief of staff. For me, I see the chief of staff previous position as a prime ministerial position, because if you have a presidency, the chief of staff automatically works out to be the prime. I'm doing that mathematics myself, you know. And so it's a powerful position. And who knows? Probably a future president that I'm speaking to now. So if I'm playing the devil's advocate and I'm hitting the points, and you coming out so that our audiences, listeners globally, and both on our social media handles and then our main platforms as well, we know that there's hope. They shouldn't give up. Adding that, another point to it is that if we can have a certain amount of money that will be dedicated to every political party, depending on the size of the party, for campaigns, and then no gifts from outside. Any party that accepts gifts, that should be noted or notified to the electoral commissioner or something like that. And then we should have, systems and mechanisms in place that will quell this over expenditure and buying votes, vote buying, and these TV things and gifts that you spoke about earlier. And then the asset declaration, if you can make this too, for me, I'll be so glad. Why the asset declaration by members of, political parties, when they get office, they need to declare their assets. Yet, we don't see any accountability, probity, balance checks, which you mentioned earlier as well, on that particular one. So if you can make the two for us, that would be so sweet.
Now, you see, asset declaration of itself does not answer your question, because it depends on what you're asking for in the asset declaration form. So if there's a company that has bought 6 houses and my name is not on it, do I have to declare it? It of itself does not. You cannot just declare your singular assets. You must also know what perhaps my spouse or my children have. Is that digging too deep? Are they not allowed to their own lives apart from me? Where does it stop? Because all you do with an asset declaration, it's a starting point, and I agree, and it's being done, but it's not exposed, it's not public. Now, there are good reasons for that, and I'll come to that later.
Okay.
But you have to look at the whole process of asset declaration to go a right to dig deeper. Because not everything will necessarily be in my name. And there are lots of things that, when I first came to the country, somebody lent me his car. I used the car for almost 8 months. Somebody will sit down thinking the car is mine. It's not mine. I've been lent the car. I was not in the country. I was given the car to use. So somebody will sit somewhere and say, hey, I saw him in this car. Is it his car? No, it's not. In an asset declaration form, you're declaring what is yours. And somebody will say, oh, I saw you in this car at that time. Therefore, why haven't you declared it? And you say, oh, it's not mine. You have to go through a process. I don't have a problem with that on the face. But we have to be clear that if you don't drill down on what is there as assets, you may never even get to the truth. Now people are putting their monies in offshore bank accounts, etc. You can't get access to those details. And the person doesn't declare.
I'm not cutting you, but I'm interjecting with you.
Yes.
Now, with the asset declaration,
Yes.
which I think is
We already do it. Yes.
Okay, fine. You say you have a friend in Ghana. I'm talking about those living in Ghana, and they get opportunity. They haven't traveled outside.
Yeah.
They haven't worked their whole life.
Yeah.
You see them, and you, at least I'm talking about neighbors and those that they've grown up with. And then all of a sudden, this person goes into politics. Within 4 years, he's put up some serious mansions. And when you compare the salaries and the earnings and the per diems and stuff, it's just, so that's the point I want to address.
So do you need an asset declaration to do that?
But we have it though.
Yes, and the person, look, there are many positions in government that don't require you to declare your assets. Do you think everybody working in the presidency declares their assets? No.
But is it not mandatory for them to declare?
Certain positions.
Okay, fine.
Article 71 holders.
Sure. So
predominantly.
if that particular one, why are we not trying to?
I like the way you are thinking. Why do I? All I'm saying to you is that I'm not against anything you are saying. I'm saying we have to be very innovative in how we do it. At the same time, we should not allow a situation where people's petty jealousies and envy begin to castigate people for no reason. Why? Yes, the example you give is a good example. But the fact that I'm able to get an opportunity or a business opportunity at a certain point in my life, which has meant that I have money to do certain things, I should be at liberty to exploit that. All you are saying, which I agree with you, is that declare it and declare where your source of income for that is. However, how many of those things, you see certain people buy houses, they put it in their name. Is it really for them? Do we know? So you have to investigate deeper, find out who is behind what and how. I don't have a problem with that.
That will help. That will help, yes. Because I'm sure that, as we all know, when you look at, I'm not referencing any political party, but within a matter of 4 years, when you see the mansions of East Legon, people are buying left and right and all that. I don't want to mention names, but these are things that could go way ahead and address it. But let's move away from this.
I agree. I mean, but you see, because I've been a victim of rumor and innuendo, I don't know how to work with it.
I'm with you.
If you have the facts, by all means,
fine.
Investigate.
Look, I agree with you. The innuendos, intricacies, all those things, speculations, and all that. But my point is, at least if we can work on what we have now, with the Article 71 that you've mentioned, I know I've seen the Constitution here, we can reference it back because of time. That alone.
But we do that already, that is not exposed. You're not allowed to open it. It's a closed document.
We need to
so there should be a body created that can look at it.
Yes.
And say, okay, when you were coming into office, this is what you have. Now you are leaving office, this is what you say you have.
Yeah, and you have one truck truck. Now you are leaving office, you have
25 truck truck.
VIP
But you know, that means that all you have to do is explain where you got your money from. And over here, I mean, when you have money in your account and they don't, it's over 10,000 or whatever, they can call you, they can't explain, they freeze it.
I'm telling you.
Okay, your money
let's look at the first part of the
yes.
question, which was we were talking about those electorates who, you know, if we can have some sort of money given to political parties.
No, as for funding political parties, it will not stop the self-financing. You need a system of checking how much people have used.
Yeah, but political funding.
So you have to, what you have to do, you have to restrict things. So for example, if you are campaigning in your constituency there should be a ceiling that you cannot have more than 20 certain size billboards in your constituency. If you are campaigning on the regional level, you can't have more than 30.
But that also gives room for them still to go taking money from private people.
No, what it means,
the point is
that what costs the money? The things that cost the money are the billboards, the media space, but the bigger heavy one is the money to delegates and whatever. The way to get rid of the media one is to give designated slots for everybody to speak for a certain period. It kills that.
Sure.
Once you have exceeded your time slot, you have no more airtime or radio. You can go and still go around and talk to people. You have a limited number of billboards or posters you're allowed to put out. Once you exceed that, you can't go beyond it. If they find that you have exceeded that, they can break it down. If it's continuous, they can disqualify you. These are issues that can be dealt with. Then you have also the issue of the delegates being bribed and people. That one, if you increase the list, the number of people who are going to vote, you cannot bribe everybody in a national election.
See, and we are looking at the very thing that brings the corruption into the mainstream.
You cannot
so
bribe.
If you can seal,
so you have to look at each one. You need a group, a thing, and say, look. So once you start putting these restrictions, then you have a group that is going to police and ensure that Osagifo who is going to
I'm here.
Yes. Who is going to contest?
Yes.
Contest in Bantama.
Yes.
Is going to ensure that when I go into Bantama and I see that there are 200 posters, I'll be able to. I have a right to destroy 100 because you're only supposed to have 100, and I'll deface them and destroy.
Okay, great. So it's been very interesting, of course, looking at the Kwame Nkrumah issue, the Kwame Nkrumah independence. Ghana is 65 years today. Of course, achievements. We touched on that. We touched on a few other things, and we looked at the separation of powers and strengthening the institutions, and of course, party funding. It's been interesting. But now let me go back to the positions that you've held and what you felt you could have done better, what you achieved briefly as we move on. So we're going to look at when you were chief of staff. And then we come to defense.
I was the deputy chief of staff.
Deputy chief of staff, and then we look at defense. So that basically puts you in the heart of running government.
Yes, but in what capacity? You have to understand the duties and what we do in that capacity.
Sure.
The first aspect is I was deputy chief of staff operations, not admin.
Right.
So my colleague, Dr. Valerie Soria, was admin, and I was operations, which meant that I dealt with more things that had to go deal with us movements, dealing with the party. So I was the liaison between the party and the government in terms of what the party was looking at, and it's because we were put there by a political party and we had to have that link. So in that regard, you had specific duties, but that was not the focus. You are more of, in my humble opinion, when you're in those positions, you're a bridge between the government ministries and the executive.
Sure.
So you keep the behavior pattern between them, or the link, the communication between them fluid, and making sure that if things have to be done, they are done. And that is what that position is about more. The decision making is done in cabinet.
Sure.
And that part, the chief of staff goes, but the deputy chief of staff does not go to cabinet.
Right.
Or it's not a cabinet member.
Sure.
But the chief of staff is and goes into cabinet. So you are not, when you're a deputy, part of that decision-making process.
Sure.
When the decisions are made and have to be implemented, you make sure that the information and between the ministries and that are ongoing happen on the instruction of your chief of staff. And that is how I understood my role and what the role entailed. Wow. So that is where it is. I think that you are far removed from what you would call a deputy prime minister. And I, over the years, have seen people who become powerful, not because of the position they hold, but because of the way a president empowers people. It is the presidential power that goes to the individual, not the position.
Right. So having said that,
Yes.
At least you still get closer to.
Yes, you're in the heart of government.
course.
Yes.
And that must be a lot of experience for you.
A lot. No, you can't. I will not give up the experience I gained. I've been fortunate. I always say that, one, I've worked in the heart of government.
Sure.
In the center of it at the castle in Osu when Mills was there.
Sure.
I've also been fortunate because I've worked in what I believe is the best ministry in Ghana, which is the defense ministry. And I'm talking of the in order of administration.
Sure.
I'm not talking in terms of any other criteria, but how the admin is worked, how you get to see documents, it's very, very structured.
Sure.
Because it's a military zone.
Sure.
So they are very structured and detailed in the way they do their things.
So being
And
there,
then I've worked in one of the more difficult ministries you can think of.
the health.
The health.
Yes.
So I have seen the full spectrum,
Sure.
more or less, except Parliament.
Okay.
But the full spectrum in terms of governance, from the executive point, I've seen the full spectrum,
Right.
and that has been, for me, it's
Great.
priceless experience.
Great. Yeah. So I wanted to touch on those as well because it will also help in what we discussed earlier, finding holistic solutions. And that's what this program is about. Not picking on trending issues and bashing here, bashing there. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in we finding solid, fundamental, holistic solutions.
I'll give you a classic example of it's very important in governance to take entrenched positions because everybody goes into cabinet trying to convince the finance minister or the presidency that more money should be given for their sector or a particular project. We are all jostling. It's like a marketplace, and not in that sense, but
Sure.
we are all jostling behind the scenes and presently to make sure that we are getting a little bit more of the pie than the next person in terms of ministerial positions. So it becomes imperative that you understand the direction of government and what their government, your president and his team are looking to achieve. It's very easy in that type of a setting for the left hand not to be telling the right hand what it's doing.
Sure.
And because everything has a monetary aspect to it, the communication is not always clear. So if, for example, you have a road contract, and as part of the road contract, the road contractor is going to build a hospital. Does that hospital stay with the road ministry, or does that part of the contract come under the Ministry of Health?
Yeah.
These type of issues are very important because at any time the Minister of Health must be fully aware of how many beds are in, what type of hospital he has, what has gone into the building of that hospital, and the staff in his civil service structure, the Ministry of Health must be aware. Sometimes they are aware, but they don't inform the minister because it's not under the ministry. So they give the advice and everything to the other ministry, but it doesn't. The minister is not aware that this is happening. These are areas which we have to iron out clearly. Where there's crossover between ministries, all the people involved must be aware.
Sure.
And know when it's coming on stream, what is involved. Forget the money aspect, but they must be aware and be kept in line. So that you can safely say as a minister of health that, oh, when that hospital is finished, I have 100 beds now, but I have 110, because 10 more beds are going to come and add.
Sure.
And I know when it's going to finish. That information is crucial to nation building and getting a global aspect of what you have.
Sure.
But if you don't know, then you will be pushing for things which you need not have to push for. And that, for me, is what creates some difficulty for some people. And that, for me, is why it's just an example. Not talking of any government.
Sure.
It doesn't matter whether it's
NDC, right.
Those type of differences between the sectors, they have to find a way to streamline it.
Sure.
Because there are very few contracts that are not multi-sectoral.
I see.
If you are building hospitals, straightforward. It's Ministry of Health and Finance. If you are building roads, Roads Ministry come and take it. But take for example, Cocoa Board. Previous governments, it has been under Finance. This government came, it has gone under Agric. Where should it be?
Sure.
Is it under Agric or is it under Finance? But Finance must keep a very close eye on it at all times, because that is the breadbasket of Ghana in terms of Agric.
Yeah.
So they like to religiously keep a tab on it. The same with other aspects of our. So anything that is happening in Cocoa Board, even if they want to go and build a hospital, Finance must be aware.
Yeah.
And
That's
Agric want to know that
I
this is
think these are very rich interactions we are having this very evening, and we are so grateful. Let's look at defense now.
Yes.
And your time there, were you also, I know most times when people get to that positions, I know you're a civilian man, did you decide to probably go to the Kofi Annan Center and take up some, and the Bema come to take up some arms and have some grills or drills?
I would say without any shadow of a doubt that it has been one of my fulfilling moments of politics.
Okay.
Because the structure and the order in that ministry, it makes working
Exciting.
peaceful and exciting. You want to do.
Okay, so why can't that be transferred into the other sector ministries? And I put it to you that you can.
You see, they have an advantage which I guess others don't have. It is small and very, what's the term I should
Maybe
use?
they are independent enough.
Yeah, it's channeled very
Right.
well. Because when you talk of the military, you talk of Air Force, Army,
Yeah.
and Navy.
Maybe, yeah.
Finish. This group. Yes, they do a lot. They have bases in different disciplines, but you're dealing with three cliques who already have a relationship. They know how they talk to each other. They know what they do. They know which corners they fight, but they have a certain structure. And the structure, there's no room for misunderstanding.
Sure.
Because there's no room for misunderstanding in a war.
Yeah. Or else you get, yeah.
Yes, then people die.
Sure.
So for that reason, their relationship is first on a professional basis before any other. And that instills the discipline, and they all go to a certain training. People don't go to training for ministry, but the soldiers who are also part of the ministry have been through a military training.
Yeah.
Every single one. So there's a certain discipline,
Yeah.
which you don't get anywhere. And for me, it was a joy. Don't forget, in my case, I was lucky. I went to a secondary school where there was a cadet corps.
Yeah, that's.
And
I know you were in the cadets.
and
Yes.
so I've dealt with them at that level, understand their ranks, understand their discipline, know what you can say and what you can't say, and give them their respect, and don't put my foot in their space. When something is military, stay out of it. Let them do their own discipline and deal with it. When it is worrying on governance, deal with it. It was a joy to work.
I haven't mentioned the cadet thing. How was your cadet days?
Oh, I had a lot of, I started as a private and I left with the highest rank possible of a student.
Seriously?
I was the RSN.
Wow.
So I was the regimental sergeant major in number 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you were involved in a lot of the training.
I dealt with everything, all these weapons.
So you are very skilled, and you pretend you are.
Well, So I understand their discipline.
Okay. So it helped a lot.
It helped, and I understand them. We were with the Recce Regiment,
That's
and
good.
we did stuff with the Air Force. We went to Achasi. We did a lot of things.
Sure. Interesting. Just briefly, so your cadet days at Achimoto School, did you cross paths with the famous, one of my admirers, Jerry John Rollins?
Often. It's amazing because Jerry came on the scene in '79, but we had come across him prior to that when we used to go for camping.
And tell me the horse incident. I want you see, there's some due diligence here. You gotta tell me.
Well, I'm a lover of horses.
That's it.
In fact, animals in general. And I used to ride in Bema Camp.
Right.
And with a lady who introduced me, Mrs. Ano. May she rest in peace, a friend of my mother's. May she also rest in peace. And so I used to go horse riding in Bema Camp.
Oh, okay.
And Jerry he loved horses. And he had an understanding. But there was one particular horse called
the woman.
Lucifer. And the name was appropriate. Because the horse would not let anybody ride it. The moment you sit on Lucifer, it will start backing.
Okay.
But it wasn't a big horse, it was quite a short horse by horse standards.
Sure.
So a rule was made in Bema Camp that you couldn't put a saddle on Lucifer. If you want to ride Lucifer, you have to ride it bareback. Ride her bareback. Or him. Bareback. He was male. And as a result of that, there were only two people, in fact three, but two males. There was another lady, female, who actually could ride him. But only Jerry and Kenneth Quarty, may his soul also rest in peace, were able to ride Lucifer. And even then, they have hit the ground a number of times.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, you don't ride Lucifer. And we never got near the horse because Lucifer was just not here.
JJ had his
And he could ride and he would fight this horse. He would sit down, you see him talking to the horse.
Wow.
Before he would mount, the horse would back him. Oh no, it was a laugh between them.
Yeah.
And they were the two that dealt with that horse.
Okay, moving to the health. Let
Yes.
me touch on the defense one more, move to the health, and then we can try and see if we can look at one or two and then wrap up quickly. Would you say Ghana is really, apart from the discipline, the military and everything, are we really, in terms of efficiency, and should anything happen to the country, can we be able to defend ourselves?
In terms of military,
The military, yeah, the military. I talk about the Navy.
I think we
Air
have
Force.
one of the most experienced army personnel in the sub-region.
Okay.
Because we have been at peacekeeping for a long time. So our troops are not unknown to combat situations.
Okay.
They understand it. It's different, you have an army that's always sitting down doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not the situation with Ghana.
Yeah,
Ever so often people go and they go out for a year at a time. 6 months minimum, sometimes a year,
Right.
before they return. So they change their environment, they are on duty, they are in places where real life bullets are being fired. So you can't go and be joking there. When you're on duty, you can't sleep because you might not wake up,
It's true.
etc., etc. So they have a force that is aware of combat.
Sure.
Not directly, but in enough of circumstances, and in some cases directly. And we also have senior members who have been in command in those areas. So we also have experience from a leadership point of view. So I have no doubt about the abilities of our Ghana Armed Forces. In fact, it's one of the most respected units anywhere in the world.
Great.
And it's important that we keep their equipment at a level which means they can respond quickly.
Yeah.
Because if they are flying jets and whatnot over there and they come and there are no fighters, then what's the point of the pilots?
Sure. Now let's move straight to the health quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. Your experience there, you described it as one of the most difficult sector areas you've been.
And it is difficult because you're dealing with a myriad of groups, many of whom are very professional in terms of qualifications.
Sure.
So you're dealing with
The doctors.
doctors, you're dealing with nurses. In the nurses, you're dealing with midwives separate from nurses. You're dealing with groups that, nurses that are coming through the nursing training system. You're dealing with engineers and laboratory technicians.
Sure.
You're dealing with the FDA. You're dealing with national health insurance.
Sure.
So you have different, and the structures are different. So for example, the ministry deals directly with the teaching hospitals. But the Ghana Health Service, which is a body of the service, deals with all the regional hospitals and below.
Okay.
So structurally, you have to know what your limitations are, who you can deal with, how. And therefore it's a bigger management skill. And so it pushes you and tests you. And everybody wants something.
Sure.
And this is the little pot you have.
Right. Now let's look at the other side of it, where is it the NHIS we call it?
Yes, National Health Insurance Scheme.
Okay, that scheme.
Yeah.
We know over here with you were born here, lived here, everything.
I wasn't born here.
Okay, but you grew up here.
Yes, I did. Well, I went.
Oh yeah, you went to Achimota.
Yes.
You grew up here. Okay. So basically, I can go to the hospital, the clinic over here without having to bring out any card. Is there a chance we could have a proper free NHIS in Ghana instead of them going to register? People can't have even the money to register and they have problems. Did you find that a bit heartbreaking? Or is there something you would have suggested that will help the poor?
There's a lot of heartbreak in the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Because you see, people don't just walk away when they are not able to access health. They die. Nana,
seriously.
It's not we are talking about it, but it's not. It's a reality. When something is not available, people don't have money to do certain things. People are turned away, or they say, if you don't bring the blood, we cannot give the blood. So go and look for blood for somebody to get blood. By the time they bring the 3 people,
Death.
the person is gone. So, and this is basic. It's not even about treatment. It's about, we don't have enough blood, and the system has been so abused that if we give the blood to the person, and with the promise that they will come and bring somebody to give the blood, the people never come. So now, give the blood. So what is the solution? I push for the drive that let's push the donation of blood.
Yeah.
And when we left office, unfortunately, we were looking at a scheme where we would make it now everybody in the ministry must give blood. Those that are available.
You know, I remember visiting, and there was this campaign of blood donation.
Yeah.
During your tenure, I remember. That
Because
was,
I actually gave blood.
popular.
Yeah, I gave
Yeah,
blood,
it became
and I made it. I made the media show it.
Yeah.
To encourage people, because for me it was a very basic thing that if it was done, would save a lot of lives immediately.
Sure.
Now, if you got into a rhythm where there was like here enough blood, where doctors would just say, give him 2 pints, and don't worry about whether there was going to be a replacement or not, it will save a lot of lives.
Sure.
That singular act. But if you have a situation where there's a phobia that if you give blood, there's a problem and whatever, we have professional blood givers, people who have given blood every 6 months they come and give blood.
Because they get something.
Yes, they get
a little token.
but it's nothing. They just feel proud
Yeah.
that they have the badge and they can. And it's a good thing because when they come with a relative, they give them the blood before they say bring the person.
Oh, okay.
Because they have a badge showing that you even donated when it wasn't. So if you have somebody with a badge, they would give you the blood. If your child or they won't say, oh look, go and bring somebody because you've been donating. So they will take the blood and give.
Yeah.
But you'll be asked to bring the replacement.
Sure.
But
now let's look at the NHS card itself,
Yes.
the registration. I know Ghana.
It's a scheme that has to definitely be looked at, and it's financing very closely, because at the moment it has a lot of arrears and backlog.
Sure.
I remember when we were in opposition, a lot of noise was being made by the MPP. The actual figures are worse now than when we were in government, and that's a fact. Sure. You can go and check on the arrears and the backlog. So they are always playing catch up, and it's like excuse me to say, it's like doom song.
Okay.
If we don't start arresting it, we will get away with it for a couple of years.
And
then one day, no.
Yeah. Always 100%.
You understand?
Yeah.
And then you say that, oh, it's that government's fault. But they should have been taking steps to check it. And that was why at one point we said, look, because we are getting 2 more oil wells on stream, we would dedicate some of that fund to up the base of the NHIA to help it stand up a bit, so that then we would then look at collections and see how. And we were looking at the capitation and seeing the effect of it, etc. So it's not an easy solution, but it's a problem that is waiting to become a monster. And if we really want to help our people, we have to look at it. At the same time, even with the demand on it now, people are still looking for the basket to be expanded to other illnesses. They want, and we at one point looked at it, but we couldn't afford it at the time, which was dialysis.
Right.
Because a lot more people. But when we looked at the figures, it was going to be too difficult. So we were looking to see how we can promote private dialysis at a cheaper cost to start with. So the NHIA has issues which we have to address and look at. And the earlier we do it as a people, the better. But so much is happening in the country that you don't hear anybody talking about NHIA. You don't hear anybody talking about teacher allowances. You don't hear anybody talking about nursing allowances. Because everybody is now talking about petrol and the e-levy and what. So it's like everything, but all those things are waiting. They are there and they are not being addressed.
And then the talking about the health issue, when you left office, with the amount of hospital that you've built, how do you feel? Do you think that this current incumbent is doing well when it comes to, resourcing those buildings and getting them into?
I know you are trying not to make this too much of a political, but this question you have asked me.
I'm actually a Ghana question.
You asked,
without political.
No. Let me be very clear in my mind.
Yes.
So that nobody misinterprets me.
Okay.
The government has failed, and failed abysmally. And when you add the way they are talking and what they promise to it, then it's not only an abysmal failure, it's a gargantuan abysmal failure.
And
No!
But today I haven't heard your tree that you used to speak at Casapreco.
That is where we are.
Yes.
OSAG4,
I'm telling you.
they have failed. They have failed us. I mean, we knew that they could not handle it. But to the extent to which they have messed up, I have no words to describe what is happening or what has happened.
Okay, briefly, we'll be running out, so touch on the E-level. Your take on it.
Look, the E-levy, for me, is not complicated in terms of what is happening in the country. You want to tax people on a tax which your vice president at one point said is a tax that should not be used because it affects the poor. Your answer to that is that you have made a cutoff of 100 cedis, therefore, and that is not sufficient.
Sure.
Put that aside. You want to tax us in a way which is continuous. So every transaction which I make with a momo, from one person to the other, that tax will hit it continuously. When it is my money being used for a particular purpose, that is also not necessarily the best way about it, regardless of who is paying it.
Sure.
It's the same money that is being taxed, and it's my own, it is hard-earned income that has already been taxed. So you have left me with my...
So with these town hall meetings and...
but look, you see...
The people are not very...
We are all the NDC needs, or what I believe our position is very clear. One, the tax is not a good tax, especially in the current climate of hardship.
Yeah.
Two, even if you are going to give us a tax, you have spent gargantuan amounts of money without any accountability for it. And we are asking you, when we ask you a simple question, like, okay, you are spending money, how much is this private jet that our president is using?
By this, I heard there's a bathing thing upstairs.
Don't worry. So
the president needs to bath.
when the plane is in the air, make sure you don't drink rainwater. It's all that people say, and I jest.
Okay.
But look, we joke about it, but the truth is that it's a serious matter. The amount of monies that are being spent on that, when there's a private jet sitting for the government of Ghana, which we are lending to other presidents, doesn't make. So tell us how much. You say you even tell us. You won't. We have no business asking. It's a national security. All manner of things have been said.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, but you want us to pay, and you haven't even spelled out how you are going to use the money. Meanwhile, when a year and a half ago, sorry, it's not a year and a half, you promised that you were coming to build 111 hospitals. Did you not know where the money was coming from? Or it was a political gimmick to win an election?
Maybe the left money will build those hospitals.
It cannot. It cannot. Even the allocation in the budget for it cannot do it.
All right. So it's been very interesting. Of course, I'm with Honorable Alex SEGBEFIA, one of our very own in London here. Now back home in Ghana, was Chief of Staff under the Mills administration, becoming a sector minister for defense and health. Very wealth of experience. Of course, a lawyer and a barrister at law. I thought, you could have been shifted to the Attorney General's office.
No.
You get my point. The reason is that your background.
I practice in law in London, and I'm also called to the bar in Ghana from 1988.
Sure.
So
Even in London, I remember you were going for the judges.
Yes.
Exams.
Yeah. I was called to the bar in London in 1988, and I was called to the bar in Ghana in 2008.
Oh.
So actually, yes, I can work, but I haven't practiced in Ghana court sufficiently to say that, oh, look, I'm at, and law, yes, but there are certain issues. So I'm modest enough to say that I don't see myself as a senior lawyer. I know
in
Ghana Palace.
Oh, but I'm sure even with that, you are trying to be modest. I'm sure with the background you have, come on, the various law modules and where you've been able to get to in terms of the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, anything in Ghana can be handled. As for that, I know you are being modest. Or probably the work there, you don't want to just get involved there. Maybe it's like the health service, which is too murky and you didn't want to get your hands in there.
It's something like that.
Okay. So, Alex, finally, what do you have to tell our audiences, listeners?
Well, I think that Ghana is 65 years old. We are proud to be Ghanaian. We don't have to lose hope. There's hope on the rise, and it's called the NDC. We are not the same as the MPP. We are different in many ways. How we think, our ideology, and how we behave, actually, is different. We have our shortcomings, but Ghanaians should persevere. Let's keep with our democratic dispensation, and let's see how best we move on from here. But as I said, the current government has failed us beyond our wildest dreams. And it becomes like you are slanging, always hitting. So I just make that statement and then I leave it. Everybody who is in Ghana is feeling it. We all know what is going on. You look at the exchange rate, you look at petrol price, and then they'll tell you that COVID, they'll tell you that the war in this thing. Yes. What were your contingencies? What have you put aside to deal with these issues? Why are the taxes so much on the petroleum products? You can't remove them now because you borrowed badly. If you remove, you can't pay your debts on the borrowing. I can go on and on. So, look, but let's keep at it. Let's try. And don't be fooled by stories that are going to be subsequently told. This government should have been changed in 2020. It didn't happen. There are question marks. We have left it. Make sure that we do the right thing in 2024 in a very big way.
Thank you so much, Honorable Alex SEGBEFIA. We are so grateful to have you on our platform and our cherished audiences, listeners here in London, the United Kingdom, Europe, and the global world. We thank you so much for coming, and definitely we'll be keeping in touch.
Thank you so much for having me, OSAG4, and kudos to all your viewers and listeners who are watching us. Thank you.